who's joining me today is okay, how come my screen's not changing? Oh, there we go. So just wanted to reaffirm a quick land acknowledgement. We work in the placemaking field, and as such, we recognize the role of elders and our obligation as settlers towards truth and reconciliation. So this is us. Kimberly, I'm not sure she's got her camera issues sorted out, but we'll hear her lovely voice. You can see what she looks like. So I'm the founder. I come to this as a parent. My kids are all grown. I miss those joyous Christmas-like days. My son just discovered eggnog, so that's my Christmas, my Christmas joy. Kimberly is our lead cyclist in residence. She's been advocate for safer modes of travel for vulnerable road users for a long time, and she goes everywhere by bike. So this is about Youth en Route, just in a quick and dirty. We incorporated in 2022, became a charity. Over the 2024-25 school year, we reached 4,600 youth. So our touches, as Kimberly will explain a little bit more, basically are 5 touches. We do a cycling unit in a phys ed class. So 5 days, and then we give them a bike, and then they're away to go and pedal their path. Our data is, as you heard in the original description, when we formed in 2022, we thought we were going to encourage kids to bike to school. We were going to follow the Ontario Active School Travel guidebook that really is a roadmap to how you encourage active travel. But then when we got into the data, we started to learn a little bit more about these communities that we're working with. And I will sort of drop numbers out because I have a lot of this, but at some high schools in Calgary, it's over 10%. It's 10.5% is our highest school of kids that tell us they have never been on a bike before. And the number of schools that we have where the kids tell us they have the abilities to ride their bike wherever they want to go, it's only over 50% at a couple of high schools. It's mostly under that. And so if you add up the number of people who've never been on a bike or who rate their skills as marginal, not confident to do anything really, that can be up to 25% of kids. And we're talking high schools where we work. So of course, high schools in Alberta, grade 10 through 12. We've done quite a few grade 9 classes as well, and we would say we see this as well. So we've changed what we do. We started off encouraging running that Ontario Active School Travel playbook, and we've now moved to literally teaching skills, and then giving bikes away. And I'll talk more about that in a bit here. So Kimberly, I'll let you jump in and talk about our 3 basic programs.
Sure. So our typical program is grade 10 PE. It's mandatory. So, I mean, even the groaners who don't like it have to do it. But what we find is even the ones on Monday morning that are like, oh, we're biking, and they roll their eyes, everybody finishes off the week smiling. All of them talk about their skill improvement, whether they've been biking forever, they still learn something. But as Laura was saying, a lot of kids have never been on a bike before. And so, developing our curriculum so that not only can we take care of the kids who know how to bike, but maybe don't know how to do it in a city setting. They've, ridden with their parents on pathways, but they've never actually used it to get to a destination. Like, that's never been the goal. So that's a lot of what we're working on. How to do braking, how to change gears, how to pick those safe routes, how to find where they're going to bike to actually get to a location. A little bit of maintenance. We usually leave that for another group. but we will keep them rolling at least. And then we do a lot of advocacy for routes, because a lot of our schools are underserved by the current Calgary network, and identifying where kids are having a gap is a big part of our program. Our adaptive program is everybody should be able to bike. Doesn't matter who you are. If you have, physical impairments or hearing impairments, doesn't matter. Everybody gets to ride with us. So we have all kinds of specialized equipment that we bring in, and we will work with the kids. Nobody is forced, but I don't think we've ever had a situation yet in any of our adaptive programs where a student hasn't tried it out. And then our winter cycling program, which I've had a number of schools reaching out to me simply because they've been waiting for winter to come, and we had, a really dry October, November, and the schools weren't in for most of October. So they're all starting to be inspired by the white stuff on the ground today. And we bring all of our bikes, our fleets, everything comes to the school with us. So you get 2 instructors minimum, you get a full fleet, you get helmets, you get all of the tools and equipment. So nobody has to bring their own stuff. We bring it all. So it's a full class in a box that we deliver.
I'll just add a couple of things to Kimberly's point. We do not charge for our programs because we recognize we do see it as curriculum enhancement, but we do see it as something that if we were relying on schools to be able to have the capacity to pay us, we wouldn't be in the schools that we needed to be in. So really important that we were able to find grants and funding to offer these programs free of charge to schools. Kimberly and her team are awesome. They really have, and we're now into our 3rd year of running our school-based programming, and we've really sort of got it down to a science. I'll let Kimberly share a little bit. These programs literally are, for many kids, the first time they've ever been on a bike. Our adaptive program started because I was in a school talking to an outdoor ed teacher about some typical programming, and literally a special education teacher cornered me and said, "Bikes, you're talking about bikes." And she took me to her classroom where she had one tricycle that was owned by the Calgary Board of Education, and it was shared amongst 10 schools with her specific program. So her students in grade 10 to 12 were able to get the bike once every 5 years. Well, of course, that meant that most kids didn't even see the bike. And it was basically a fairly ordinary tricycle. It's funny because it had a weight limit of 150 pounds, and some of these boys in special ed programs in high schools are huge. But those boys wanted those bikes and fought over riding them. And so then it was like, what can I do about this? And so from that moment in 2022, Youth en Route has sort of become leaders and learners, experts about adaptive cycling. We've now delivered 44 tricycles that are at Calgary high schools, Calgary schools in general, and riding them every day. Last year, we didn't get capital funding, but we used programming funding to take our tricycles and offer sort of that 5-day programming the same way we do with our typical programs. And just to tell you a story, the girl in the pink shirt that you saw in Alyssa's video, she'd never been on a bike before. Her dad had no idea that she could ride a bicycle. And the first day she couldn't pedal. She was like going backwards, which is what lots of those adaptive kids do. And she was a little tentative steering. By the second day, she was literally singing as she pedaled around the gym. There's another girl that was new to Canada and nonverbal and with very compulsive behaviors. And they were they'd never seen her engaged in anything. She would never even get out of her wheelchair. She didn't need her wheelchair, but her wheelchair was kind of her safe spot. So she would just sit there. And literally, we had aides and teachers crying, like bawling, running to get the principal because this young woman got on the bike and we strapped her feet in and we were able to push her around the gym. And she hung on to that handlebar for probably 20 laps of the gym. And the teachers, everybody were crying because they'd never seen her engaged in anything. And they'd also never seen her go longer than, 25 or 30 seconds without putting her hands in her mouth. And she literally was 20 laps hanging onto the handlebars where she couldn't put her hands in her mouth. And that was just such a breakthrough for that particular student. And that was 2 years ago. She now uses her walker at school and still loves the bicycle. And anytime we can get a bicycle over to her, she's our go-to. We leave our bike, rather than leaving it in storage, it goes to a school so it can be used at all times. Kimberly, anything else you want to share about sort of some of the impacts?
I would say with a number of our schools, especially with newcomers to Canada, probably my favorite was a boy who had never ridden a bike, never actually had seen a bike. And when I asked how that was possible, it was because he had been living in a Syrian refugee camp for 6 years. And so had only seen what was actually in the camp, which was literally tents in a desert. He had all of his classmates helping him to learn to pedal and was able to ride that day. And the teachers were all crying and asked the teacher of the next class if he could stay behind because his sister, who had also been in the camp and had been given refugee status into Canada, was in the next class, and he wanted to support his sister and help her to also learn how to ride. So it really became the entire school getting involved and cheering them on.
Well, and again, we think about bike riding as just sort of something every kid does, but it really isn't. And one of my favorite stories was when we pulled into one of our very first programs. We pulled into Forest Lawn High School, and we were working with the lead classes, and those lead students, it's literacy, literacy, academic development, and English. Sorry, literacy, English, and academic development is for kids who've never been in a formalized school program. And we brought the bikes out, and there were, like I said, we're talking grade 10 to grade 12, and there were 4 boys that grabbed the bikes, and before the teacher or any of us could even see, they were gone. And the principal found them later that period at the local 7-Eleven store. And they got into so much trouble. They had to write us letters. I think they were all suspended. But to me, it's just a classic story of how bike is freedom. And they wrote us all letters to apologize for their behavior. But all of the letters were very similar in very much, sort of the only way they could write, no bike since Syria, wanted to go, freedom. That's literally how they see a bike. So I really appreciated hearing all your stories and where you're from and what organizations you work for, because when you look at this wheel, you all have a part to play in this wheel. So what do you need to choose biking? So you need all of these things, right? You need secure parking. You need a safe route. You need to have the ability to ride a bike. You need to have access to the equipment. And you need to have a culture or an understanding that you can do this. And again, for so many of our kids, they've never been on a 5-kilometer bike ride. They have no concept that this is even something that they can do. They've never even thought about it. I mean, one of my great stories is the young girl at Father Lacombe who stopped her entire class in front of her house and said, "This is my house. I'm never paying for the bus again. I'm going to Tim Hortons every day." And it's really they don't know what they don't know. So all of these pieces, secure parking, safe routes, we're going to talk about all of them and how communities as a whole. So we work very holistically. We work on all of those pieces. We're advocating to City Hall. I spoke 10 o'clock last night. I made my presentation to Calgary City Council. We talk about all of these things, and we actively work on all of them. But we know, secure parking. We don't own any schools or bike racks. Safe routes. We're not building new routes, but we can advocate for them and be voices for where they need to go. So you can't do this encouraging active transportation without looking at the big holistic picture of it, and that's really important. So transportation poverty is something I just want to speak about briefly. Lots of places, especially in smaller communities, transportation poverty is a huge issue for teenagers. They want to be able to go places, but they don't have a way to get there. And again, most of them don't even think about a bike because it's just not something that they have considered. So when we show a kid and give them the tools, then instantly it reduces transportation poverty. As you are all well aware, in urban centers in Alberta, families have to pay for the bus. So bus pass in Calgary is $80 a month for a youth bus pass. And if you want to get to school by bus and you're in over grade 7 in Calgary, you have to pay that. There is a slight subsidy in the Catholic board, but it's only 30%. So we asked the question, would you use Calgary Transit more if it were free? And the numbers are huge. 28%. This is a Calgary average, so you can imagine we have some schools that are much, much higher on this. But what we're looking at is 28% of kids, teenagers, are able to use Calgary Transit the amount that they want it to. The others can't. And there's only 13% that say they won't use it, which if you asked adults, would you use Calgary Transit? I'm guessing the number would be very much higher than 13%. So this is really the reason to do this is this reason. It makes people mobile. Kimberly, I'll let you speak to our cycle of change because we really see this as a key, and we've just sort of gotten better at articulating our impacts. So Kimberly, I'll let you, or I'm not going to read it out. Everybody can read it themselves, but Kimberly can maybe speak to it.
Sure. And I mean, there are so many examples now. I bike year round, so I'm at every bike event. Generally, I'm involved with every bike group in Calgary. I'm out biking every day. I get my groceries that way. If I'm going somewhere, it's almost 100% by bike. And so what I've been seeing is a lot of the students that I've taught through a classroom are now engaging with the community. And so we teach them the skills. We, open their eyes to the fact that you don't have to have the sunk cost of a car. You actually can make a different choice. And they're actually doing it out in the wild. So I see kids now participating in our monthly critical mass rides. And they're students, but they're there just for fun. It's a Friday night. It's mostly adults, although kids are becoming a huge component of it. And these kids are, and I mean, I call them kids, but they are young adults. They are high school students who are now becoming free range adults and going out and experiencing their city their way. And they're doing it autonomously. And so it's because we've either given them the skills to be able to bike to the location that's the start point of these rides. I see them at the library now all the time. They all call me Miss Kimberly. And they're out and about in the city. They have a bike. Sometimes we've given them a bike. And that is part of our programming. If you don't have access to a bike, we will give you one. It's a refurbished bike, but it comes with a brand new helmet and a lock. And we're giving you the skills to actually go out and do it. My favorite example of this is during the teacher strike last month. We had a high school student from Forest Lawn who actually came out to one of our, not really a protest ride, but a support ride for RED, Ride for Ed. And he ended up taking the lead. So this is a kid who was a PACE learner, student 10 when he took our programming the first time, and volunteered to lead the adults who were all there, most of them teachers, and a couple of supporters. Took the lead, made sure that he was looking back to so that he hadn't lost all of the adults who don't usually ride very often, and really just wanted to be part of the conversation. We ended up going for coffee at the end of the ride, and he wanted to talk to all the teachers about how excited he was to talk to teachers again. He had missed being in school for 3 weeks. And so these are some of the changes that we can see out in the wild with these kids when we give them the tools. They're becoming better citizens. They're able to think a little bit more critically. They're able to problem solve in the wild. This same kid was at a critical mass ride and had a flat tire, managed to fix it up, didn't panic. He was absolutely fine. So we're giving these kids more than just the tools of biking, but we're giving them independence and freedom and the ability to become citizens of their community.
Yeah, Genevieve, I was really interested to I've written your name down here because how we quantify our impact is really interesting. We have lots of anecdotes that, you know, a bike and the skills to use it is is improving absentee rates, and we're working with some of our schools to measure that, because I mean, if you're relying on someone else, even if it's mom, to get you to school, it doesn't always work. Sorry, kiddo, I've got a meeting this morning, I can't take you. But if you are independent and autonomous, then, we think there's a connection. Our principals tell us anecdotally that there is a connection. But I'd love to find a researcher that can help us with that. We also think that there's a connection to high school completion rates, because, I mean, our data is really, really rich. We have generally at every school we're at, and we've now been at 17 schools, we collect at least 200 surveys. At some schools, it's as many as 400. So the data is quite rich. But we need to be able to figure out a way to track those kids over time. And we've done some of that work, but not probably enough. And we need some expert help to get us there. So would love to have that conversation. But I think those of you that work in public health, it's another piece as well that we think is really important. I'll just move along here because I don't want to, I'm wary of the time. It's already noon and I want to leave time for your questions. So all of these benefits, you guys know this. I don't have to tell you. It is, there are so many co-benefits to active transportation. I don't need to share that. You guys know about it. So I'm just going to flip through that. So we work in Phys Ed 10. That is our total sweet spot. And I'll tell you why. Basically, we see that kids at grade 10 are independent and want to be independent. We see less of that in grade 7, 8, 9. And we even see less parents willing to sign acknowledgement of risk forms or permissions forms from the school board that the classroom sends out. We're doing cycling class and parents will say, no, I don't want my child involved in that. Literally, I've seen forms come back saying, I don't want my child to learn how to ride a bike. But when they get to grade 10, there's the kids have much more autonomy and much more self-determination. And we've actually had instances at schools where a young woman, usually a woman, is in grade 11 or grade 12, is 17 or 18 years old, and the parents have, or the school counselors and social workers have allowed that student to sign their own permission slips if dad doesn't want his daughter learning how to ride a bike. So we've seen that. That's a very rare case. I think we've seen one, but that's a reason why. And I think these kids are, and Kimberly can join, but grade 7, 8, 9, we see lots of kids who are more scared of the activity. And then grade 10, they just seem to have that much more confidence and desire to do it. We've been at schools with grade 7, 8, 9s, and we don't have the success rates of getting those non-riders riding like we do in high schools. Like I said, grade 10 is perfect. We start off saying, wear your street clothes. This is not a physical activity. This is transportation. And again, in high school, the kids are ready to take on that are ready to see that argument. In junior high and really elementary school, a bike is a toy, and I'm going to be a jackass and jump around on it because that's what bikes are for. Obviously, we know that walking is faster, but the kids don't really see that until we give them that. I would love to find partners to help us build this into curriculum. My understanding is swimming is part of the grade 3 curriculum and part of the 1 grade in junior high, where it's mandated that schools need to teach swimming lessons. But there's nothing anywhere that says we need to mandate bike riding. And I know other jurisdictions, Vancouver has a very big grade 5 cycling program. Again, we think that's great, but a kid can't ride independently at grade 5. They're still going to have their parents involved. When we work at grade 10 or 11, those kids can make their own decisions. And I think that really is what drives change, is because the kids are making the decisions, not their parents. So again, I talked about this briefly. Rate your cycling skills. This is a Calgary average. Again, I spoke about the none being as high as 10.5% at some schools. So and for sure, I would say bike education is only worthwhile when bikes are provided, because so many kids don't have bikes. At some Calgary high schools, it's 25% of kids that tell us they have a bike. But when you ask them to bring a bike in, it's like a bike they had when they were 10. It's not a bike that is appropriate for moving around. I'm just going to play this video, and Kimberly can talk a little bit more about how we teach non-riders to ride. But basically, we try not to touch them, so we don't have to hang on to a seat or help them balance. We, as you can hear, Kimberly and I yelling, we do a lot of, keep your head up and look straight ahead. But this video is just kind of fun. And I will go in and look at your comments. So if you have questions you'd like me to do, I'll just jump into the comments, to the chat, and look at that while I play this video.
Yeah, you're in control. You've got the brain. You know exactly how to stop that. Okay.
Most of our education is scaffolding, based on scaffolding. Generally, I get kids to just roll, and sometimes I'll give them a balance bike as opposed to a pedal bike so that they're not hitting their shins. But really, I tell kids all the time, I'm not teaching you how to bike, I'm teaching you how to balance. You already know how to balance. You're not going to fall off your chair. You walk around every day and manage to catch yourself if you start leaning over. So don't be afraid. And that's the big thing. It's overcoming their fear as opposed to anything else. But if you give them incremental steps and goals, if you can roll, off one push 5 feet without putting your foot down, then you graduate to a pedal bike, and then you just do one push, go 30 feet. Again, not putting your foot down. If you can do that 5 times, then you're ready to add in pedaling. So I generally get students who have never been on a bike before. I think my record is 14 minutes. I told that to one kid just 2 weeks ago, and he rolled his eyes. He was like, I don't think that's possible. And then he rode that same period after telling me that it wasn't possible. And I said, oh, look at the time. And he goes, ma'am, that was 18 minutes, and like rode off away from me. So it is entirely possible. And it's just a matter of giving them the incremental steps to start biking.
Awesome. Thanks, Kimberly. So access, this is where we use our partners. And I didn't put their video on the screen, or their logo on the screen, but we have a group of seniors at the Greater Forest Lawn Senior Center. You can see them over in the corner here, Merv and Glenn and Steve. And they fix up about, it depends on the week, but between 10 and 20 bikes a week for us. So we get them from landfills, from donations, and then they've got a little shop there. They meet and hang out. They've now got, I think, close to 10 volunteers who help them. And we find most communities, there are like garage bike mechanics. There are people who've started to create little hubs. And we're trying to use all of those partners. There's a guy in South Calgary called Cody's Bikes, and he fixes up bikes for people in his community. And we share, we work together. We couldn't fix up 500 bikes a year. So the way we've done it is we have a hub model where bikes come in, our mechanic triages them for fixing or for parts or what have you, and then they go out to our communities and then they come back. So in basically since September 2024, we're at 819 bikes. Last year, we got a small grant for what we called our Kids Bike Trade Up. And you can see those bikes here. We gave out, I think, about 230 bikes through that. And it's really just about sparking and spurring the circular economy. Kids bikes are a really difficult one because parts are really expensive. So you almost never find a used kids bike for sale in a used bike shop, because it takes about 2.5 kids bikes to consistently be able to get one refurbished bike. And a 20-inch tire costs you twice what a 26-inch adult tire would cost you. The picture you have at the top there is one of our bike giveaways. That's at Father Lacombe High School. Last year, we gave out, just in one day, we gave out close to 100 bikes. Pretty amazing and pretty transformational for a school. Sorry, now let's go back to, okay, so how do we track and measure mode shift? So we have our school travel survey. And you can see we're bumping up in our numbers to, 4 to 5% at some schools. But again, all of those pieces need to be in place. So one of our poster child of mode shift is Forest Lawn High School. And it's part of that is because there's secure parking. The parking got moved inside to the school. We've now had to add 2 new bike racks to their setup. And then we do ask questions, how often kids are using their bikes. And 50% tell us they use them a couple of times a week. A full quarter of them are using them every day. Now, we did this survey back in September, so that was kind of over the summer, but I still think it shows quite quite a shift. And what's interesting is we had not one person said, I'm not using it, of the students that we were able to survey. Yeah, and some of the quotes are really quite amazing. We also do sort of that building community piece. We call it our ABC challenge. Would love to work with SHAPE, with others who do this, because one of the challenges we have is when you do Bike to School Week in June, you can't do high school kids because they're already into exams and graduation, and it doesn't work. And I would argue June doesn't do anything to build the community that you need to start having kids ride their bikes together. We need to be doing it in April or May, the minute the weather starts changing and people are itching to go. Same thing in September. We need one in September or October, so that the kids can have that ability to meet people and to connect. And so I would love to have some of those conversations. And like I said, we call it an anything but a car challenge, because it's really important that we be inclusive. And when we know that lots of people don't have bikes, calling it Bike to School Week is not super helpful, because kids feel excluded. 40% of kids tell us they would consider biking to school, generally in most schools. So if you think about that, at a high school, that could be well over 1,000 kids that would consider biking to school. Of course, there's no place to put their bikes. There's no, but that at some schools, that number goes up to 54%. So it's not that these kids don't want to do it. They don't know how to do it. They don't have the equipment, or the pieces aren't in place for them to do it. So we have a youth advisory council. That's a key part of how we organize our work. They direct us. I would encourage you to sign up for our social media channels, because our youth advisory council has our, Bike Tip Thursdays or something that comes from our youth advisory council. So we think there's a big opportunity, just from the desire that we see when we talk to kids. So now I'll just open it up to questions. I tried to be as concise as possible, but
I think you did great. Thank you so much for the presentation, Laura. Just want to, open the floor for any questions or collaboration ideas you guys had. I know that there's some SHAPE people there. Jen did leave from Ever Active. I feel like she could be helpful in terms of grouping together in school initiatives. But yeah, I'll open the floor to anyone who has any questions for Laura.
I would say to Maida, she put a comment in the chat about bikes and transit. And honestly, one of the first things that I do when I'm creating a community ride from a school is to take them to the nearest, C-train station or, large bus hub, where it's like, oh, if you can bike from school to here, and usually this is our one of two community rides. So we do a shorter one that's about 2.5 kilometers. And you can almost always get to a transit hub within 2.5 kilometers from that school. And if you show them how easy it is to get there and how easy it is to take your bike on or to mount it onto one of the buses, that opens a door. And then, of course, the next day we go for a 5-kilometer ride, and they're, like you can see them making the calculations in their head, like, oh, if I wanted to get a job, I could do it 5 kilometers away, and it only takes me 20 minutes to get there.
Yeah, I think that pointing out that bikes and bus can be part of the journey, like you can use them in tandem. I think that gets left out of the conversation sometimes. So what I've seen is that people that were very keen cyclists don't necessarily consider the transit as part of the journey. And I think that limits people in their thinking about where they can go.
Yes. When I tell them I haven't owned a car in almost 13 years, it kind of blows their minds. Like they just can't conceive of that. But a lot of times I use a mix or, trip chaining, whatever phrase you want to use. I live in Calgary. We are called Sprawl Gary for a reason. We are a huge, huge landmass footprint. And for me to get to, some of the high schools that are on the edge of the city, it can be 28 kilometers. And I often do, like a mix of C-Train or bus or whatever, but I always have my bike for that last mile.
Yeah, I think once they can learn to ride a bike, they need to be thinking about that mode of transportation in the larger context of their life, right? So, like you say, integrate it with C-Train and also transit. And it just opens their mind to what's possible, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as I get them to a train station, like all of the possibilities are suddenly right there. And it's now, instead of having to get a ride or get picked up, because the C-Train will go longer than a bus to certain areas of the city, you're no longer limited. You now have that last mile covered.
Genevieve, I'm just looking at your question here. One of the things that I would say is that parents are kind of like kids in that they only see their city from the front seat of their car. And they have no idea how one could get around by bike and how a lot of those routes are off you don't have to ride on roads. So I think that education piece, and it's funny, I totally blew by one of our presentation slides I was going to do. So we ask kids why they don't choose active travel, and again, I have all that data, but it's about 40 to 50% tell us that the reason they don't ride is because they don't know the route. And we are working, actually, we're quite excited about a new we're using a new mode, a mapping tool called GeoVelo. And GeoVelo comes from France. And what it allows us to do is us as experts can create routes and set a route in the school. So our vision is that every high school in the city would have access to, 20 or 30 maps so that they can see and it's not a map that has just been generated by open data, because if you've ever tried to find a bike route in Calgary from Google Maps, it's going to take you on Crowchild Trail just about. So GeoVelo allows us to go, and I would encourage you to go look it up. Kimberly, you could even share the GeoVelo community with us.
Alyssa already put it.
There you go. But we actually have a Youth en Route community. And if you go in there, you can see, Kimberly's created a whole bunch of rides. I've created some, and they're like the best route to take. And so that education and piece, I think, goes a long way to making parents more comfortable. I would say though, that's one of the keys why, this age group is really, parents are really sick. I don't know if any of you, it sounds like most of your kids are little, but trust me, by the time you have 3 teenagers in your house, you are so sick and tired of being the chauffeur that you want them to be independent, and you see the value in them having to, navigate their world. And we are doing our children such a disservice. Trust me. As a parent of adult children, if you don't know how to visit a new city and figure out how to get around, my daughter goes to University of Toronto and she literally says, "Mom, it's ridiculous. So many people, they want to go to a movie and they're like, ordering an Uber. She says they've never been on the subway and it's the best thing in the whole world. And it's true. If you've only been taken around in the backseat of a car, that's what you'll continue to do your whole life. And it's expensive and it's not very much fun. And you will never meet a friend in the backseat of a car. So we really see this as kind of an important piece. But again, when we work in high schools, we don't see parents. It's not like an elementary. I mean, we do some junior high programs, and there will be parent volunteers that come in to help on those days. But by and large, this is high school kids looking after each other. I would say that's one of the beautiful things about our adaptive classes is when we go bike riding with our adaptive kids, especially if it's outside, the school will bring in a phys ed 30 class or a sports medicine class to help be extra sets of hands. And it's the most amazing thing to see. Bikes really build community. They become, it's one thing that, the autistic kid who's nonverbal has in common with the phys ed 30 jock is that they can both ride a bike side by side on the same space. And we see it happening at our schools when we're running programs. It's really amazing. So yes, I would say if anyone is interested, we would love to be able to figure out ways to replicate our programs in communities across Alberta. We have this roadmap. We know how to do it. It's not expensive. Our budget for the past year, we spent under $300,000 to reach 4,600 kids. And those capital costs, some of those, our fleet and helmets we've got, but it is not super expensive. Most of our bikes that we ride are refurbished bikes. And you can pull them from the dump and you'd be amazed at what you can get rolling securely and safely from a bike that nobody wants.
Well, I love that this touches on the sustainability pieces of the puzzle, right? Pulling things out of the landfill that don't need to be there and can be reused and repurposed for, others to use.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maida, I'm looking at your comments about bikes, and Strava is one of the sort of maps that people use. So Strava has something called a heat map that shows where people are riding bikes. And cities very often look at that data to say, oh, this route is popular, or we should build something here because lots of people are working there. Strava is really, it's more a fitness app, and it's I want to say it's like a competitive jock app. And so it's not really capturing those everyday trips, those trips to the grocery store, because, our kids, they're not interested in that. They just go places. And that's where we're hoping that GeoVelo, we can get to the point where we are sharing this data. Maybe even the city helps pay for our access to this data so that we can show them a more balanced picture of who's riding bikes and where. And like I said, the open data is just not, Kimberly could speak to it more than I can. She rides more places and more different places. But I mean, she's been now to 14 or 15 Calgary high schools, which are all over the city. And, Google Maps will not take you on the right route to get there. It's even one of my regular routes is from my house to Spruce Meadows for soccer games, and where Google Maps or even GeoVelo wanted to take you is not the route that I created. I put a Spruce Meadows from my house map in there that takes you on the side streets, that is just fast and easy, way better than other mapping things. So again, we recognize that this is a challenge and a problem, and one that, again, it takes more than just us to solve it. We need to work with whole communities to be able to do this. And it's good if we collaborate and work together and save money and make things go further. So
for sure. And that kind of goes back to the whole premise of this peer learning network and why it's important to, fish the room for collaboration and ways that we can put our brains together. And, the thing is in the health sector is that we're all wanting to do the same things and we're just doing little iterations of the same things, and we could just group those things together and make it more grand and all of the good stuff, facilitate some more change. So yeah, I am mindful of the time. There's 10 minutes left. I don't know if there's any, does anyone have any more questions for Laura? Want to pick any more brain power in the room? I guess also I have a question for myself. In terms of implementing grade 10 biking into the curriculum, um, how far is that work into I guess that's not a great way to frame that, but I guess what are the logistical pieces behind that? Are you guys working with like a teacher board? Are you working with specific principals at certain schools?
So we've looked at sort of a locally developed course, like a 1 credit course to drop into the CTS curriculum, which is the Career Technology Services in high school, as opposed to changing the phys ed curriculum per se. They don't open up curriculum very often, sort of the actual curriculum. So we've been looking at creating a credit course. But again, you know, these kids tell us that even if they could get a credit for biking places, they would do it more than they do it now, right? So that whole biking to school and giving them an incentive to do it, we think it fits into career and life management, which is a grade 11 course. It fits into leadership. It fits into outdoor pursuits, and obviously phys ed. And phys ed 20 and 30 is, there might be a way to sort of shoehorn something in there, but again, we've been looking at sort of creating that locally developed course to add a 1 credit unit to an existing course. It's a case of finding the funding to like, we've got the people that are like super keen to build the curriculum for us, and have the knowledge and skills to build these locally developed courses. But we haven't had the sort of funding or capacity really at this time. And I don't think it would have been worthwhile really to this point, because we've gotten so much better at understanding how and what we need to teach to make kids, to empower kids. So I think we're sort of getting to that point now where we really are going to look for those partners to help us make that happen. Yeah, I think there's a number of different ways to tackle it through the education system, and we'll look at that again holistically and with partners as the goal.
Oh, that answers that perfectly. Well, thank you for the insight there. And I think
the other thing sorry, Alyssa, I'll just share briefly because I haven't talked about it. And I know a lot of you work in the primary care network. And, you know, one of our big challenges, quite frankly, has been funding. So we're seen as curriculum enhancement. So we'll have some people saying, oh, well, you know, we don't pay for school-based programs because that's a school program and, you know, that's a provincial responsibility. And then we're not really a sports program because we're sort of school-based. And so it can become a challenge to sort of offer those programs. We have started to offer sort of more community-based programming in isolated sort of cases. We've done a sports picnic for the Calgary Newcomers Club. We've done some youth, and those things are actually easier to find funding for. When it's actually in the school, it becomes harder. So anyone who has any ideas on sort of things we could or should tap, we've received, we get just a small grant from the provincial government, but we're funded like a badminton club in Calgary would be funded. So not a ton. And we've not got any funding from the city except around events. So so we haven't been able to sort of tap those provincial funds. We do have excellent support from Jumpstart, from some of those granting organizations. Cycling Canada actually has given us some money as well, because they recognize they're not going to have competitive Olympic cyclers unless they start somewhere. So, so they've been funding us.
That is a good point. Not an avenue that I would have thought to take either. That's really smart. I guess do you explore the safety aspects of it? Like if you were to open up like more of like the safety aspect of it, I don't know if that could be an approach grant wise, if that's.
Well, and there used to be a lot of money sort of through the province transportation safety. My understanding is a lot of that money is kind of dried up. And it's interesting, you know, the questions about safety are really interesting. And it's a lot of what I spoke to City Council about last night, because there have been increased, Calgary and Edmonton both have seen increased pedestrian and cyclist deaths. We know that this is a big problem. We know how to fix it. It's design standards, and it's you know, lower speed limits. It's not I'm going to say it's not rocket science, but it's you know, traffic engineering has solved these problems. There are cities in the world that have zero traffic deaths. But I think that traffic safety piece is an interesting one. You know, the city of Calgary and us, not that we get into a disagreement, but we want kids to be safe. We tell them what the laws are, and the law in Calgary is that if you're over 12 or 14, you cannot ride a bike on a sidewalk. But the problem in Calgary is that there's such crazy rules where bike paths just slide into sidewalks, and there are places where you actually can ride your bike on the sidewalk because the local community has got an exception to it, but it's not signed or communicated. So we tell kids to ride where they feel safe. And we've been, you know, that's our key message, is we don't want any kid to be put in jeopardy for doing what's healthy and what's good for them. So I don't know where I was going with that, Alyssa, but it's an interesting piece.
Okay. Yeah, just that was like maybe an area maybe you could utilize in terms of trying to get the grant and like solving that big piece of the puzzle that is the complexities of bike safety rules and being on the road with a car or being beside another cyclist or not signaling and all of this other stuff. So I think that could be a good place to crack open some of the gaps there. Okay. Oh, and then I'm just reading this comment to see if there's anything I can pull from there.
Kimberly, go ahead. I think you probably can.
Oh, yeah, please. Yeah.
I was just going to say, years ago, under the NDP government, there was an Alberta Bikeways and Design Guide that was started and had gotten through 2 readings once the draft had been completed. And then, of course, the government changed, and the PC government, which became the UCP, had no interest in furthering it. So, I mean, maybe that's something that we collectively could do, is start pushing the current government to approve that Bikeways and Design Guide that's been sitting in draft status since 2017.
Wow.
And, you know, that would take care of a lot of these things, because municipalities don't have a guidebook on how to build safe streets. The city of Calgary informally uses it. They do have a copy of the design guide, but there's no policy or rule around it because it hasn't been approved. So something like that is something that all of us collectively could advocate for, and would go a long way to addressing a lot of the concerns that we all have about the roads in our communities.
I think that's a brilliant idea, and yeah, something I had no idea about. Again, yeah, we can utilize this group to push to look into that a bit more. I can include that into the little summary that I will write up and send to everyone afterwards. We are sitting at time now, so I just want to leave some space for any extra comments, questions. Feeling like everyone's hungry and wants to run off to get some lunch. I know I'm feeling the same. So I just want to take a minute to thank you so much, Laura, and thank you, Kimberly. Yeah, Kimberly, for sharing your guys' story, your organization, sourcing the group, and creating, facilitating really such a great conversation. I think there's some good stuff that we could pull from this and work as a group moving forward. Yeah, so yeah, I just want to thank you guys for being here. Laura, if you have any last words, or Kimberly, you have any?
All great. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I just put my email in the chat if anybody wants to reach out.
Beautiful. Okay, well, with that, we'll see you guys, I believe in February, but I'll TBD on that date. You'll see me in your emails eventually. Okay, with that, have your guys have a great Christmas, and we won't see you. Enjoy your holidays, enjoy the snow that'll eventually come. And thank you, Amelia, for coming and supporting us on the back end there. Okay, I will release you now.